Welcome. We're very lucky to have with us here today two guests who have a lot to say about courage in leadership amid these tumultuous times. Ellen Weintraub, who as Commissioner and Chair of the Federal Election Commission has stood up for fair elections and regulation of money in politics for many years. She was dismissed by email in February from her vital role. And Dean Carter has been a powerful voice for moral values in business over his 20 years in people and culture, including 4 CHR roles and a decade at Patagonia, where really he set the standard. We'll be opening this up to questions. I'm sure you have so many questions for Dean and Ellen, so think about that, put your hand up at any point, and Mike will come over to you. I'd love to start with you, Ellen. Your dismissal from the FEC was abrupt and public, and it came amid a career of striking success. I sort of want to anchor us in that experience. I know you were not terribly surprised by what happened, given your history of standing up for what you believe is right. But can you talk a little bit about the personal impact of your firing, and which is an experience that so many people have gone through in the federal government and beyond?
Thank you, and it's really such a pleasure to be here talking to you all. I was kind of expecting it, but I didn't expect it when it happened or how it happened. The normal thing would have been to replace me with another nominee, and instead I was just summarily fired. I was cut off from my email, I was cut off from all my databases, my ID card was decommissioned, so I couldn't get into the building or into my offices anymore without an escort. My staff had to scramble to find other jobs. One of them is still looking. If you know anybody, she's really great. It was, even though I was expecting it, it was still sort of disconcerting. And I find that still a lot of people can't figure out how to find me because they cut off my email without even giving me a chance to put in one of those, if you want to reach this person, email her at this address. So I'm on LinkedIn if anybody's looking for me.
Dean, how do you see the erosion of legal and ethical norms in government affecting the private sector and leadership in corporate culture? I know you have a real ear on that. And how can HR leaders, like the people in this room, make sure that compassion and fairness is still at the heart of their company's operations?
What I hope is that corporate America doesn't reflect what's happening currently in the more public environment. And I hope we have stand up and have a lot more courageous leadership. I think this is a really challenging time. I listen to and talk to a lot of CEOs in this moment, and it's really difficult to navigate the question around, is this a time to stand? Is this time to bend? Is this time to hide? And I think this is on their minds, like, is this a time to duck or stand up? And what I hope is that we get to a place and realize this isn't the way that we would run our companies, and certainly not the model in terms of how you let someone go. People have long memories, and I think in this moment, it's easy to be courageous when times are easy. It's hard to be courageous when times are hard.
Absolutely.
And the thing to remember in this moment, it's not just you going through this. Your employees are going through an incredible amount of uncertainty. What does this mean? What does the company stand for? What does my leader stand for? Where are you in this moment? And they really are looking for a lot of things. I'll talk about that in just a minute. Like, what are some actions you can take in this moment to make them feel safe? And I guarantee you, when I go into a room and ask people, how much of you feel like this is the most chaotic moment of your life? I'm gonna ask you this, how many of you feel like this is a really incredible chaotic moment in time? How many of you feel like your teams are spending a lot of time trying to work through the chaos? There you go. So, and you multiply that times 10 because you have power and your employees don't, and an agency, and they're just really struggling in this moment. So we'll talk about some real actions you can take on this.
What gets in the way? I'd love for you both to weigh on this, but what are the things that prevent leaders from being courageous in the moment? What are the factors?
I think that there is a systematic effort underway to silence opposition voices and to intimidate people. I was fired in a way that was designed to intimidate other people at my agency and other people at other agencies. And I think the only response to that is to stand together. We all need to stand together. Your organizations have power. And no administration can go up against the entire Fortune 500. If your leaders speak out together, if they combine together, maybe it is counterintuitive for people who normally feel like they're in competition with each other, but this is a moment for combined action, and that is where we will find our strength and our power, because it is so important for people to stand up and speak out. Winston Churchill said, "You can't appease a crocodile, it just means you're going to be eaten last." So you don't want to be eaten first, last, or ever, and the way to fight that is to band together and find our voices.
I think this time it's really important just to go back to what do we stand for? What are our values and what are our principles? So this isn't about politics or red or blue or purple or whatever, but it is real about, what are the principles that you stand for and your employees are looking for, like, in this moment, what do you stand for? And I think there's definitely a level of fear. I got a call right after the whole DEI thing went down and some of the executive orders started to come in from Laszlo Bach. And he said, "Dean, I know you and a few other folks have some level of insolence and level of safety because no longer in the head of HR role." By the way, Patagonia didn't care about safety at all. We sued the president 16 times during the last time, and you probably saw a lot of stuff. We were very, very public. There was an image on the cover of Time magazine of Yvonne Chouinard, the founder, and Trump staring at each other. So we were, talk about courageous leadership. I mean, that's a great example. But he said, I'm going to try to see if we can get a bunch of heads of HR to sign this document.
This was Laszlo Bach.
This is Laszlo Bach.
Yeah,
and so, "Dean, would you sign this?" I was like, "Of course." And he called me back 2 days later, and he said, "I could only get 4 former heads of HR to sign this."
Do you think that's going to change in time?
I hope that it changes. This is the time to stand together and not to duck and stand for principles. These aren't just like, let's move beyond like moral and the right thing. These are business issues. This is just good frickin' business. DEI, we've always said diversity, equity, inclusion are good for business. Treating people right on the day that they join and the day they exit is good business. These concepts are just good business. And if you're running a good business, these are the things you do and things you know, and this is what you do as a leader. That doesn't change.
Not to mention supporting rule of law. I mean, there's a reason why these great companies were formed in this country and have profited in this country. It's because we do have rule of law, because we do have freedom of speech. It's because we do have protections for people that allow you to recruit from all over the world and recruit the best talent, and that they will want to come here and not worry that if they say the wrong thing, their visa's going to get pulled or they're going to be ousted for some reason because they just expressed their own point of view. If you want to recruit great talent, if you want this to be the United States of America and not Hungary, then you have to stand up for those principles, which is how business grows.
I think, absolutely. Thinking about the challenges ahead, not, again, putting aside politics, but just some of the business challenges ahead, the tendency of leaders is to want to express optimism and to be upbeat. How do you advise HR leaders who are often kind of like, I think, courage whisperers, right? They're often the people who can help their CEOs find that courage in themselves. How do HR leaders help the CEOs find their courage and avoid that kind of delusional optimism that can sometimes be a bit of a kind of instinct for leaders?
The only job more lonely than the head of HR is the CEO. And the only person, they don't have a lot of people they can do some whispering in terms of help them be courageous. And what employees want, I believe, is to acknowledge their fear, acknowledge their concern, acknowledge where the moment is, and then move on to like, here's some things that we still stand for, and this is what we're going to do. I think that's really the important thing, is just to do that, is to anchor in principles, acknowledge the fear and concern, and talk about the pragmatic things that we're doing around this company and what we still stand for. That's really what they're looking for, and they want, more than ever, transparent, authentic, courageous leadership.
That's great. Any questions, just to put it out there? What do you see as the, well, actually, sorry, I'm going to go to a different question. Dean, you've defined courageous leadership as speaking up for your values even when it's hard. I wonder if you could give some examples of what that might look like in action, like this week, next week, this month.
And what I mean by that is there was a moment when I was at Patagonia and I did an op-ed and I presented to the CEO, Rose Marcario, and she said, "Is it provocative enough?" And I'm like, "What do you mean by that?" She goes, "Did you hit hard? Were you true to what you believe?" And I was like, and it was about supporting women at work. I'm like, "No, let me rewrite it." So it came back, and 20% of the people were like, "That was it." Dean, I got slammed on it, and 80% had some reasonably positive. I came back and said, "Yeah, 20% really didn't like what I said." She goes, "You crushed it. Perfect." And so when you're a courageous leader and standing for something, know that, and when you whisper to the CEO, you're not going to please everyone. When you stand for something, you're going to upset this group and you're going to upset the group, and be really honest about that. And so that's an action you can help your CEO be courageous in this moment. Go, here's what's on their hearts and minds. Here's what they need for you at the moment. Here's what you can do. I'll stand beside you. I've got your back on this. And that's, I think, what they're looking for is just a little bit of nudge. They're humans too, they're dealing with this and dealing with their families. They're likely have someone else who's impacting their family's things. So anyhow, this is your moment, to give them a little nudge and like, I got your back and let's work through this together. Yeah.
Everyone could use that, I think. We have a question over here.
Yeah, Ellen and Dean, thanks both for sharing. Kyle with Deloitte. I think my question a little bit is, there's a lot of different stakeholders, public-private companies who will say, I don't want the bottom line impacted, or I don't want our stock price going down, or CEO stands up and then the stock price gets hit and the board says, that CEO's out, new CEO in, or whatever it may be. And I know that's maybe oversimplifying it, but how do you think about, there's this shift from companies taking really big stances 5 years ago to now, hey, here's topics we're actually not going to very publicly take a stance on in the external world because we're concerned about retaliation. So there's a lot of nuance, and certainly I'd love a little bit of your perspective of where maybe you've seen that evolution. And some companies, absolutely, they can do it, and they can, and they will, and et cetera. But others are maybe like, do I do it a little bit quieter, or do
Right.
So just acknowledging some of the nuance.
Ellen?
Well, as I said, I think that working together gives you more power, but I also think that there are a lot of people out there who are looking for leadership in corporate America, looking for leadership in government, obviously, but looking for leadership in academia. A lot of people feel like they are under attack, and I think people will look back on this moment. Your clients, your customers are looking for brave stances. Courage is contagious. And I think we're seeing that in the university setting, that the first university that felt under attack started to cave, and then other universities started to band together, and they have strength in numbers. And there are so many people out there who are looking for demonstrations of courage, and I think that will be rewarded. I think we have to look past the initial moment to where we're going to be in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, and how all of this is going to look then.
Love that. Great note to end on. Courage is contagious. Don't be the last person eaten by the crocodile. Thank you so much for your insights, Ellen and Dean.
Thank you.